17 seconds. Hold on to that number. Because by the time we're done here, you're going to understand why 17 seconds of rewound footage might end up costing FIFA more than any bribery indictment ever did. Because on one wild night in Atlanta, in front of a global audience of hundreds of millions, football's governing body walked itself into a trap it built with its own hands. And the man who sprung it wasn't a whistleblower or a journalist. It was a video assistant referee with his finger on the rewind button. Egypt versus Argentina should be remembered as a classic 90-plus minutes of everything this sport is supposed to be. A team of underdogs playing the game of their lives against the champions of the world. Instead, it's going to be remembered as the night the word rigged stopped being a fringe conspiracy and became the mainstream conversation. So today we're going to do something different. We're going to put FIFA on trial. We'll lay out the prosecution's case piece by piece. Then we'll give the defense its fair hearing, because that's how this channel operates. And at the end, you're the jury. Let's get into it. Picture the moment. Egypt are 1-0 up on Argentina. The reigning world champions are rattled. Then Egypt win the ball deep in their own half and go the full length of the field in one devastating move. Mohamed Salah, calm as ever, picks out the pass across the box. Mustafa Zizou buries it, shirt comes off. 2-0. An entire nation loses its mind. And then the screen in the stadium changes. VAR check in progress. Now here's where it stops being football and starts being something else. The review didn't look at the finish. It didn't look at the assist. It scrolled backwards through the entire move past midfield, all the way to the opposite end of the pitch, hunting through 17 full seconds of open play until it found what it was looking for, a tug on a shirt and a boot grazing a toe in the initial challenge. On the strength of that, one of the great World Cup goals was wiped from existence. Think about what that means in practice. A goal that took 10 touches and covered 80 yards was erased because of contact so minor that the referee on the pitch, standing yards away, saw nothing. The linesman saw nothing. 22 players saw nothing. It took a man in a room with a rewind button and a mandate to find it. Here's where the prosecution's case gets teeth. Because this isn't about one bad call. It's about a governing body caught saying one thing and doing the opposite in the same week. Days before this match, FIFA's own refereeing chief, Pierluigi Collina, stood in front of cameras and told the world how this tournament was being officiated. Let the game breathe, allow normal contact, keep the whistle in the pocket. And to be fair, the numbers backed him up. Falls per match at this World Cup have dropped noticeably compared to Qatar, and dropped even further compared to Russia. Players have been shoulder to shoulder, shirts have been grabbed, and referees have waved play on. That was the standard. Every team in this tournament had 90 minutes of evidence, game after game, telling them exactly what would and wouldn't be punished. So how does that square with a VAR official conducting an archaeological dig through 17 seconds of footage to locate the softest contact of the entire evening? It doesn't. And you don't have to take my word for it, because the people who analyze refereeing for a living lined up to say so. The BBC's rules expert called the decision a complete departure from how the entire tournament had been handled, making the obvious point that you cannot ignore light contact live and then go searching for it on a screen. Sky's man on the ground argued the technology was being twisted into something it was never designed to be. One veteran broadcaster joked that if the review had scrolled back any further, they'd have found an infringement from the Pharaohs. And a referee who actually officiated at the last World Cup went on record with the most damning assessment of all. Argentina had multiple opportunities to recover possession during that move, which under the sport's own attacking phase protocols should have made the goal untouchable. His conclusion? The officials got it wrong and Egypt paid for it with their tournament. That's not fan noise. That's the professional class of the sport saying the machinery malfunctioned at the worst possible moment in the worst possible direction. Now flip the coin, because 11 minutes from full time, the exact opposite standard walked onto the pitch. Argentina somehow had dragged themselves level. 2-2, stoppage time, chaos everywhere. Egypt pour forward one last time and their players go up in unison, screaming for a foul inside the Argentine penalty area. Contact, their players certainly thought so. But this time there's no pause, no screen, no man in a room scrolling backwards through the footage frame by frame. Play races on. Argentina counter in a heartbeat and Enzo Fernandez rises at the far post to head home the winner. 3-2. Game over. Tournament over if you're Egyptian. So let's put the two moments side by side, because this is the heart of everything. When Egypt scored, the technology reached back 17 seconds and the length of a football pitch to find a reason to intervene. When Egypt appealed, the technology didn't so much as glance at an incident that happened seconds before the decisive goal in the box in plain view. Same match, same officials, same technology. Two completely different appetites for scrutiny, and both of them broke the same way. You can see why an entire fan base and honestly half the neutral world watched that sequence and reached one conclusion. What happened next is the part FIFA genuinely cannot spin, because it didn't come from an anonymous account or a fan forum. It came from the podium. Egypt's head coach, Hossam Hassan, sat down in front of the world's press and didn't dance around it. He described his team as victims of an injustice. He pointed out that his side's penalty shout never even earned a review while their goal was deleted for contact. Nobody in the stadium had noticed, and then he said the sentence that turned a refereeing controversy into an institutional crisis. He suggested out loud into the microphones that maybe certain people wanted Lionel Messi's tournament to continue. Let that land a national team manager at a World Cup, publicly floating the idea that the competition's outcomes are being shaped to protect its most marketable star. And he wasn't finished. He revealed that Egypt had formally objected to the referee appointment before kickoff, uneasy about a French official taking charge of Argentina given the history between those nations in the last final. He claimed pressure had been applied around this fixture. He described confronting the referee at the final whistle and accusing him face-to-face of concealment. His striker went even further. Zizou, the man whose goal was erased, told reporters the officials had stolen the work of an entire country, then sarcastically crowned Argentina world champions on the spot. The Egyptian bench was so incandescent that a member of their own staff was shown a red card just for the protests. And FIFA's response to a sitting international coach accusing them of match manipulation? Nothing. Not a statement. Not a rebuttal. Not a word. In a crisis of trust, silence isn't neutrality. Silence is fuel, and for the record, Egypt's list of grievances didn't start and end with two incidents. Earlier in the match, replays caught Argentina's right back leading with an arm into the face of an Egyptian winger play on. Later, Salah went to ground under a challenge where the defender appeared to catch his foot, play on again. Individually, each one is arguable. Collectively, Egypt saw a full evening of 50-50 calls that all roll downhill in the same direction. Here's the uncomfortable truth about why rigged trended within minutes rather than hours. It's because for millions of viewers, Atlanta wasn't a plot twist. It was a rerun. Go back to the group stage of this very tournament. Messi goes into a challenge against Algeria's captain with his studs showing and connects. The kind of tackle that has ended careers. The referee reaches for nothing, not even a booking. Pundits across every major network called it a clear dismissal. Algeria filed an official complaint. Then in the knockout rounds, an American player commits an almost carbon copy offense against a Bosnian opponent, studs onto ankle, and he's off. Straight red, no debate. Two identical fouls, two opposite outcomes, and the only meaningful difference anyone could identify was the name on the back of one of the shirts. Now rewind 4 years because the ghost of Qatar hangs over all of this. At that tournament, Argentina were awarded 5 penalties, a record for any team at a single World Cup, and every one of them landed on Messi's boot. In the quarterfinal against the Netherlands, in one of the most volcanic matches ever played, Messi appeared to handle the ball in a situation many believed warranted a second yellow card. It never came. Holland went home. Argentina lifted the trophy, and a significant slice of the football world filed the whole thing away under "we'll be watching next time." Here's why that history matters so much psychologically. Suspicion doesn't work like a light switch. It works like sediment. Every borderline call that breaks the same way adds another layer, and eventually the pile gets tall enough that people stop evaluating individual decisions on their merits at all. They just add each new one to the stack. By the time the VAR started scrolling backwards in Atlanta, millions of viewers weren't asking, was this correct? They were asking again. That's the position FIFA has maneuvered itself into, a world where its referees can no longer make a marginal call involving Argentina without triggering 4 years of accumulated doubt. Well, next time arrived, and when Egypt's players hit the turf in despair while Messi was being carried around Atlanta on his teammates' shoulders, all of those receipts came out at once. One viral post put it perfectly, arguing that Egypt had just been handed the same treatment the Dutch and the French got in Qatar. Whether that's fair or not, the fact that the comparison was instant and universal tells you everything about how deep the suspicion already runs. And now we arrive at the reason this story is bigger than one football match, because the Egypt controversy didn't detonate in a calm news cycle. It detonated in the middle of the most compromised World Cup anyone can remember. Consider the environment. This is the tournament where a phone call from the President of the United States to Gianni Infantino was followed by the suspension of a red card ban on the host nation's star forward, invoking a procedural clause that had never been used at a World Cup before. Jurgen Klopp's response cut through the noise. Football belongs to the game, not to politicians. Wayne Rooney went further, branding the whole episode disgraceful and saying the FIFA president should be embarrassed. This is the tournament where every half now gets split down the middle by so-called hydration pauses, a scheduling invention that just happens to be worth an estimated $500 million in additional advertising inventory for American broadcasters. One of the most respected football writers in Britain described it as a desecration of the sport's basic rhythm. This is the FIFA that recently invented a peace prize and handed its very first one to Donald Trump, and then into this exact atmosphere, with accusations of pro-Argentina favoritism dominating every feed on the planet. FIFA announced the officiating team for France versus Morocco in the quarterfinals. An entirely Argentine crew, top to bottom, the first single nationality panel of the whole tournament. I'm not telling you that appointment is sinister. I'm telling you that making it in this specific week is the governance equivalent of lighting a cigarette at a petrol station. Even if nothing ignites, what were you thinking? And understand why the money angle refuses to go away. Because it's not an abstraction. Messi at this tournament is not just a player. He's the single most valuable broadcast asset in world sport right now. Every additional match he plays moves ticket resale markets, drives streaming numbers into record territory, and keeps sponsors who paid 9 figures for this event very, very happy. A Messi exit in the round of 16 would have vaporized the emotional centerpiece of the entire tournament with 3 weeks still left to run. Nobody needs a secret memo to understand which outcome the commercial machine preferred. That's not proof of anything, but it is a motive sitting out in plain daylight, and motive is exactly where suspicion goes to feed. Stack the whole case up, a superstar who escapes a red card that others receive. A record haul of penalties 4 years ago, an unpunished handball that eliminated the Dutch, a 17-second forensic rewind against Egypt, a late appeal that never got a glance, a commercial ecosystem in which every extra Messi match is worth a fortune in advertising, viewership, and sponsor exposure, at the farewell tournament of the most famous athlete the sport has ever produced. The prosecution rests, and honestly, it's a hell of a closing argument. But now we do what the outrage machine won't, because this channel doesn't traffic in accusations it can't back. Let's hear the other side properly. Start with the hardest fact in the room. There's no proof. Not a document, not a directive, not a whistleblower, not a leaked message. What exists is a pattern, and patterns are powerful, but a pattern is circumstantial. Circumstantial evidence can convict in the court of public opinion. It shouldn't convict anywhere else. Now take the decisions themselves, because each one, examined coldly, has a legitimate explanation. The disallowed goal, under the actual written laws, an offense by the attacking team anywhere in the build-up to a goal, is fair game for review. And that early challenge genuinely was the first link in the chain that produced the goal. Even the pundits mocking the decision admitted through gritted teeth that by the strict letter of the rulebook, it was probably defensible. The problem isn't that the officials broke the rules. The problem is that the rules allow this. The ignored appeal at the other end, different threshold entirely. Because the contact happened inside the penalty area, the question wasn't, was there a foul? But was there enough for a penalty? And penalties, by design and by practice, demand a higher standard of contact. Had that identical incident occurred 1 yard outside the box, consistency probably demands a review and possibly a free kick. Inside it, the bar wasn't met. So you get 2 moments that look identical to the human eye processed through 2 different legal thresholds, producing opposite outcomes. That's not necessarily a conspiracy. That's a badly designed system functioning exactly as designed, which might actually be the more depressing conclusion. And then there's the truth Egypt's supporters least want to hear. So let's say it plainly and with respect. When Zizou's wonder goal was chalked off, Egypt were leading 1-0. 6 minutes later, Zizou scored again, and that one stood. Egypt were 2 goals clear of the world champions, with 11 minutes on the clock. No official took that position away from them. Argentina did. Christian Romero won a towering header. Messi conjured a half volley that maybe 3 players alive could execute. And in the 2nd minute of stoppage time, Enzo Fernandez attacked a cross with more conviction than anyone marking him. Egypt's own goalkeeper, who was genuinely magnificent all night, admitted afterward that errors crept into their final 10 minutes. Even Zizou conceded that if Argentina had won purely on merit, it would feel different, but a substantial part of that comeback was merit. Both things are true at once. Egypt were wronged, and Egypt let it slip. Adults can hold both. One more point for the defense, and it's a structural one. Actual match fixing at this level would require a chain of silent conspirators, VAR officials, on-field referees, appointment committees, all coordinating flawlessly across dozens of games with not one of them ever leaking, ever confessing, ever slipping. History says organizations leak. FIFA, of all organizations, leaks spectacularly. We know about its past corruption precisely because insiders eventually talked. The idea that this same institution is now running a watertight, invisible conspiracy in the most scrutinized tournament ever staged asks you to believe FIFA is simultaneously corrupt and flawlessly competent. Anyone who has followed this organization for more than a week knows those 2 things have never coexisted. So where does that leave us? Here's my honest read, and it's the entire reason this video exists. The most likely explanation for Atlanta is not a fix. It's a flawed technology, an inconsistent protocol, and a sport that has drifted so far into legalism that a goal can be technically illegal and obviously legitimate at the same time. VAR was sold to us as a safety net for clear and obvious errors. It has mutated into a surveillance system that manufactures errors nobody experienced in real time. That's the quiet scandal underneath the loud one. But here's FIFA's genuine nightmare, the one the title of this video promises, and it has nothing to do with whether the fix is actually in. FIFA's nightmare is that it no longer matters. Trust is the only currency a governing body actually possesses, and FIFA has spent years setting fire to its own reserves. When you shelve a suspension because a head of state picked up the phone, you spend credibility. When you carve up halves of football to sell more commercials and dress it up as player welfare, you spend credibility. When you hand out peace prizes to politicians, you spend credibility. When your referee's chief promises light-touch officiating and then a VAR performs a 17-second excavation against the team facing Messi, you spend credibility you no longer have. And when you respond to an international coach accusing you of manipulation with total silence, you confirm every suspicion without saying a word. The result is an organization that can now be right and still not be believed. Think about how extraordinary that is. The disallowed goal was probably lawful. The non-penalty was probably correct. And it made no difference whatsoever because hundreds of millions of people took one look and assumed corruption, and the sport's governing body had no credibility left to talk them out of it. One prominent columnist openly wondered whether Infantino has finally overreached beyond recovery. A former international turned pundit put it more bluntly, saying the president is now in genuine trouble. When a coach can accuse FIFA of scripting a tournament and the global reaction is a weary nod instead of shock, the institution has already lost the case regardless of the facts. That's the exposure. Not a smoking gun, a mirror. Argentina move on to Kansas City, chasing back-to-back titles, with Messi sitting alone at the top of the scoring charts and crying tears of relief instead of farewell. Egypt fly home carrying the greatest performance in their footballing history, a goalkeeping masterclass for the archives, and a wound that no apology is ever going to close, partly because no apology is ever going to come. And the rest of us are left holding the question FIFA refuses to even acknowledge, let alone answer. Was that night in Atlanta just football being football, cruel, chaotic, gloriously unfair in the way it's always been? Or was it something with fingerprints on it? I've shown you the full case file, both sides, nothing held back. Now it's your turn on the jury. Was Egypt robbed by the system, or did they surrender a 2-goal lead the old-fashioned way? Drop your verdict in the comments because I read them all, and make sure you're subscribed because an all-Argentine refereeing crew takes charge of France versus Morocco this Friday, and if you think this story is over, you haven't been paying attention. I'll see you in the next one.